What's up guys, Deceiver here, back with another build video, and today I've got a pretty spicy one. This one has been a lot of fun while I've been playing it. I've only been playing it a couple days, maybe 2 or 3 days at most, just waiting to make this build video. And yeah, so we've got the Fire Mage that I have called something. I don't know what I ended up calling it exactly. But anyway, this build has been very fun and pretty damn strong. It can be a lot stronger if you take the time to optimize it, if it looks like it's something that you want to play. I don't think I'm gonna optimize it too much more because I've got a really good idea for a sick build that I want to work on right after this one. And I'll go into that more at the end of the video, but yeah, the Fire Mage. So I want to go over the skills first in this one because I know you guys see Bleeding Edge there, and I know you're going to reference my last video where I said I wasn't going to make a Bleeding Edge build. Well, this isn't a Bleeding Edge build. Bleeding Edge is only there as a filler, and you're not going to be spamming it majority of the time. It is quite helpful against bosses. But what I originally wanted to use didn't end up working out. I wanted to use Flight of Gavnir instead, but it turns out that the cooldown for this ability is way longer than I expected. I think it doesn't even show what the cooldown is right here in the stat sheet, but it ended up being like 8 seconds or 9 seconds, and that wasn't enough to get rid of my rage at certain times because it only costs 132. So I wanted to have a rage spender so that I could use a one-handed catalyst instead of a staff. So this is what I ended up coming up with, because Flight of Gavnir does have fire damage on it, but so does Bleeding Edge. So Bleeding Edge was the only other choice that I could come up with that would work. I don't even think Warpath has... Oh, it does have fire. Maybe Warpath would be pretty cool on this build, actually. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, maybe I'll test that out before I switch builds. But anyway, going into the first skill, we have Tear of Ethelial or whatever. Turns into fire damage. The modifiers that I'm using Reduce Cooldown, I'm using the fire damage, obviously, increased damage, and I'm using alters the skill so that it deals damage over time. So it doesn't just drop down one fireball, it sits there and rains over time, because this build basically, it doesn't hit huge numbers, but it does do a lot of different ability damage all at once, so it ticks really fast when it is doing damage. So clearing mobs is really pretty easy with this build. Clearing bosses a little bit harder, but that's why you got bleeding edge. So and then increases critical damage. This is a crit build, not a wisdom build. And another reduces cooldown, so the cooldown is effectively 3.7 seconds, almost 4 seconds. So it actually comes up pretty quick. I think this is the lowest cooldown skill. Solar Fall actually might be a little bit lower cooldown by the time it actually gets going. But yeah, I think this one actually is the lowest cooldown. So Tear of Ethereal does pretty good damage, crits 51% of the time, does a decent amount of crit damage. This is like your quote-unquote magic spammable. So yeah, then we've got Plague Burst with the fire modifier as well, of course, because we're doing a fire build. So increase the area of effect, allows it to be cast at cursor location, so you can cast it from a distance, and then increases damage, leaves a poisonous cloud when something dies inside of it. That one's pretty important for the ticks. And then increase critical damage again. And then we've got Ether Jump. As you can see here, I've got all 5 of my skill bars unlocked. If I was going to take out any of these abilities, if you don't have all 5, Ether Jump would probably be it. The sole purpose of having this ability is just to get around. I don't have the Time Weaver ability in the skill tree unlocked yet, so the stasis is really doesn't do anything on this build just yet. If you wanted to modify this build yourself, if you plan on playing it for a while, then you can keep Ether Jump and take out something else and get the Time Weaver skill that you need stasis for. So basically, yeah, I've got reduce willpower costs, increase teleport range. I've got the stasis on there just because I forgot to take it off. It doesn't even do anything on this build really. Gain willpower for enemy passing through, reduce the cooldown. Casting this removes all crowd control effects. This one's actually really important. And another gain willpower when you do it, when you pass through an enemy. So yeah, just keeping that willpower up. Next is Solar Fall. This is probably the most impressive skill that I've used on this build. It's a really fun, and it's visually really cool looking. So I'm using damage dealt by the area effect increases over time, so as it gets near the end it does more damage. Increase the tick rate, basically it's giving me more damage as well. Convert it to fire, which also increases the damage. Increase critical damage. Area of effect becomes static when cast. This one is really important for staying mobile, so you don't have to sit there and channel it. I probably would not use this ability until you have this unlocked. So just keep it on your bar and don't use it very much until you have this ability or this modifier unlocked. And then increase critical hit chance. It's up to 54%, so it's critting pretty often. You could probably take that one off and add something else on instead, like increase the damage. So yeah, and then the last ability, well, not really the last ability, but we've got Anomaly. This is basically just to keep everybody in place while we're using our AoEs on them. It does decent damage as well, but yeah, it's mostly there to just keep them in place. You could use something else in place of Anomaly as well if you want to fit the theme more. Then you could run the shield charge ability instead, or you could even run Juggernaut, which would actually be a pretty good one depending on how you decide to go defensively. I'm going to go into why I spec this defensively the way that I did in a little bit. And then of course we've got Bleeding Edge, everybody's infamous skill to shit on, including myself. I don't really like using this ability because it is so damn overpowered. But on this build, it really doesn't do that much damage. It's not going to crit for 100k on this build. It's going to hit crit for maybe like 30 to 40, which isn't that great. It's more, like I said, it's more of a filler. So change it to fire damage, increase the weapon damage, axe continues to spin after being thrown, and cast it at the cursor location, because you don't want to cast it on top of yourself. You want to stay away from the mob as best you can, and increase the critical damage as well. So yep, that is the skills. Let's go ahead and get into the Gates of Fates before I lose my breath. Okay, so since this is a crit build, we'll start on this side. There's less nodes anyway. We go and take the wild card, of course, just like anything else. We go up through here and we get the extra willpower and rage, because you want to have a lot of willpower. You don't necessarily need to take this if you're still leveling. I would not take this until later on. It actually, our willpower consumption is actually not that much, which is another reason why we don't spam Bleeding Edge very often. So then we go up through the Scholar. We grab the 60% status ailment chance score. Grabbing that is good to go ahead and set enemies on fire and watch them burn for one of our other nodes. And then we go up through the Kabbalist. We get the ailment stacks. We don't take Insidious Decay because we don't want to reduce our non-damage over time, but we do take the extra ailment stacks. And then I think I was going to go into the Alistair tree to get the crit chance. I wanted to increase my crit chance a little bit more, but I ended up stopping and not going up there. Then we go into the Oracle of the Trinity tree. Now, I wanted to... One of them, I'm not really sure if it's working correctly or not, and that's this Ancient Fervor. I'm not sure what it does because it doesn't really specify. It might only work if you're using all three elemental ailments. So I don't know if this is working correctly or not, but someone let me know in the comments if you do know. And then the other tree I take that is for sure working correctly is Omni Tempest. When you cast a fire ability, you have a chance of launching a meteor at the target or at the cursor location. Has a cooldown of 2 seconds, so it adds some damage. And then if you get this node, it adds another 10% chance, so it's 17% chance to launch a meteor every 2 seconds. And since you're doing damage over time, it launches pretty often. You may not see it. You have to look really closely, because I didn't know if it was working correctly or not, and it is, because I cast my the tier of whatever it's called, and I did see the meteor launch. It's not very big. It's a tiny meteor. It's a little shooting star. I came up here and got the willpower transfer reduction time. This is very noticeable. Getting that willpower transfer reduction time and the willpower reduced cost. These nodes are actually very noticeable. I didn't end up going with this one because I didn't want to deal damage to myself because I'm already squishy as it is. But this could be good if you decide to go tankier with this build. And maybe in the future I'll come back and try it out when I've got all my skill points and everything. Then we went into the Child of Fury node. We did not opt to go for the, obviously we don't want rage regeneration, we're a magic build. So basically I just wanted to convert a lot of my damage into fire damage and get that extra fire damage. I didn't take this one because I don't want the rage per hit. And then I went over into the Exorcist and got one of my favorite passives, the Branded Burst, the tenant points. This passive has been very good to me. I like it a lot. And then I'm starting to go up into the Time Weaver to get time, which time cannot heal. Obviously, I'm going to start on another build after this one, so I probably won't complete that. But if you're going to play this build, I would highly recommend getting this. And you will do probably, well, you'll literally do double the amount of damage that you see me doing in the beginning of the video. So I would highly recommend getting that, and especially if you have your 5th skill slot and can apply stasis with Ether Jump. So yeah, definitely get that. And then we go over here. I took Covert Operative. I'll talk about that in a second. The 100% dodge chance that after taking a hit. I took Merciless Lethality to give me more crit damage, and then I went up here a little bit more to get more dodge. Now, the way that my gear is set up, I was running a dodge-based defensive build and really didn't have time or the patience to try and change it over to something else because I would have to change my gear out completely. So I went ahead and stuck with using dodge as my main means of defense. So I took these extra dodge nodes to get my dodge up to 52% or whatever it's at right now, along with the 100% chance after getting hit and the 10 hit points. That combination has worked very well with me, for me, in high levels. When I'm fighting, what's funny is when I'm fighting the Untainted, you know how the guy like spears you and you can't move for a bit? I dodge every single one of his attacks majority of the time. I've only been killed by an Untainted one time. And every other time that I've gone in there, I've dodged every single one of his attacks. So dodge seems to be a very strong defensive mechanic, especially if I can get it stacked up to like 60-70% dodge. I think it'll be very, very strong, and I really want to test doing that at some point. But yeah, that's what the skill tree is looking like right now. You can make some tweaks to it. If you don't want to use the dodge mechanic, then you'll want to go for either force shield or higher health. And that's very easy to respec in the skill tree as long as you have the gear for it. If you do want to do that, I would recommend going for heavy and bruiser gear. I, however, am using a mixture of rogue and bruiser gear with a little bit of heavy mixed in there as well. So with my gear, I've got dodge chance in all of my sockets except for one because I couldn't get this to roll defensive 3. I am running fire damage in all of my offensive sockets, as you can see here. And then I'm running fire damage as well in my catalyst. And I got this neat little sword. This actually dropped, this and my necklace actually dropped after I made this build. And I was like, holy shit, this is perfect. So it gives 26% fire damage and 82 to 123 fire damage on attacks. And the total damage is higher than what I had before, and it gives ferocity. So this sword was actually perfect. It gave more damage overall than the what is it? The 3 socket sword that I was using. I can show you what sword I was using before, if I still have it somewhere here. Was it this one? No. Wait, there it is. I was using this sword before, the Tyrannical Dust Shack with offensive 2. You want offensive 2 sockets so you can get fire damage on spells. This one only had 39 to 71 fire damage, and the unique has 82 to 123, so it sort of and it also has the percent fire damage on it, so it compensates the gems that I would have put in this rare sword. And then I've got this, I got this accessory after I got the sword. I was like, holy shit, like, the world's trying to tell me that this build is going to work out. The only non-useful stat on this is the 17 wisdom, but the rest, 27 additional damage to burning targets, 46% damage from burning... Oh, I didn't even notice that. That's from burning enemies. Yeah, that can be a problem, actually. You might want to use another accessory. That's a lot of extra damage from burning enemies, but it does give you life leech from fire damage. If you're running health and you're a bit more tanky and not relying on dodge like I am, then you can run this accessory. Otherwise, I would just find another amulet to use. And then it has the 29% burn chance core on fire damage, which is nice as well. So yeah, I didn't even realize that. I didn't notice any difference, but that's probably because I dodge most attacks anyway. So I'm not taking the damage to know if it's more or less. But yeah. So I'm running heavy on pretty much everything as far as like my body goes. Bruiser on chest and helmet. I'm just now running this legendary belt, but it's not that great. I'm mostly going to be using this for my next one. No spoilers on, on my next build just yet. Heavy on the pants as well. Basically, I wanted to get a lot of ferocity and resistances, but I'm mostly using these because they have dodge chance on them. So you can see dodge chance on those, dodge chance on this, dodge chance on this. I don't have dodge chance there. I don't have it here either. I have it on my glove here. It's a rogue glove. The problem with rogue equipment is that it always rolls agility, which is, in my opinion, a kind of a shit stat. So that kind of sucks, but everything else, yeah, pretty good. And then my catalyst has fire damage on it as well, and crit. The rest could have rolled much better, but it's not deterring me in any way, shape, or form, so that's okay. Again, you can always optimize this build much better than what I have it, but it's basically the idea that I wanted to go for as far as a fire mage, and of course I'm using the fire apocalyptic form, not that it matters. But yeah, I think my stat sheet, I have some into toughness and most into ferocity. I have nothing into agility or wisdom. Yeah, I think that is pretty much it. I could show you my stats as far as crit chance. It's almost 50%. It's not quite there. You can get it to 50% pretty easily. My fire damage and burn chance. Burn chance 25% almost, probably because of the amulet. And my dodge chance is a little bit lower than I would have it on my other builds, but it's 48.9%, which isn't bad at all. You're going to dodge most attacks. Yeah. Resistances are decently high. Stacked with the dodge isn't too bad. So 2000 resistance on most things except occult damage. So you'll take more damage from occult, obviously. Yeah, I think that is pretty much it. I don't think I missed anything. So the next build that I have an idea for is going to be a shadow assassin that is spell based, strictly spell based, and not. It is going to be melee, but it's going to be all spells. It's not going to use like any kind of rage spender type spells. It's going to be a willpower shadow assassin. I don't have a name for it or anything like that yet, but I've got a lot of theory crafting to do with that one, because that one's going to be much harder for me to actually make work. So I'm going to get to work on that one. It probably will be another week before I'm comfortable with that one, before I actually put a video out, but I am going to make a video on some other stuff that has to do with this game, so keep an eye out on that. I might make an easier to put together build before the Shadow Assassin while I'm trying to work out the kinks with it. It all just kind of depends, and I think this video is running kind of long now. It's almost at 20 minutes, so I'm going to end it here. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys end up liking the build if you try it out, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.